You will now view portions of a formative conference held in the early student teaching experience. The cooperating teacher uses several strategies to assist the student teacher in reflecting on the diversity she is encountering in the classroom. These strategies include: sets a positive tone, encourages the student teacher to think reflectively about teaching in a diverse classroom, shares his own professional perspective about teaching, uses probing questions to understand the depth of the student teacher's knowledge. To facilitate this conference, the cooperating teacher uses open-ended probing questions to promote reflection. The questions are: what went well in your lesson? Did you accomplish your objective? What challenges have you faced in this classroom? And what are some of the similarities and differences within the class? Finally, how did you meet the diverse needs of your students?
Brooke, I really enjoyed your lesson yesterday. Before we get started and before I get into some questions and try to work with a little bit of what you learned from that, I want to talk a little bit about classroom management. I picked up a number of things that I was really encouraged with during the course of your lesson, and I just want to share those with you briefly. Number one, you use proximity a lot. You are constantly in motion. I'm not sure if that was deliberate or you had something in your shoes that kept you moving, but that was really good. The children tend to stay more focused, obviously, as you move around the room and as you're involved that way. Probably your second strongest classroom management technique is just use of your voice. It sounds like at this point in time that you've developed that teacher voice. You have the volume, you have the expression. Whether you're faking it or not, it's there, and that's really important. And finally, you have the authority in your voice. There's no question during that lesson who is in charge. That doesn't mean a child won't check you out and challenge you a little bit, but your voice clearly has the authority there that would make a kid, if you looked him in the eye, back up just a little bit in response to you. Probably most subtle, but very critical, is ignoring. You ignored a lot of little minor things, which you need to do. Generally, the lowest level intervention you provide for a minor misbehavior, the better off you are. Converse to that would be jumping at a kid, yelling at a kid, calling them out, stopping the lesson for misbehavior. Occasionally, a more severe intervention is necessary, but the ignoring is when you can get by with the ignoring and you can continue with their lesson and they come right back to you, that's exactly what you need. And I saw you doing that repeatedly. You had some polite reminders. Blood doesn't talk. Reminded me of what Dead Bodies Don't Tell Stories or something like that, one of those movie lines. But blood doesn't talk. Just a very gentle way of saying, hey, I'm up here, it's my turn. You need to turn off. And finally, you did a lot of just redirecting. Often that was with your voice. You might have ignored something. You just jump back in, plowed back in with your voice, and here we go. We're back on track. And I was really encouraged by that, because when that classroom management is in place, then you can focus on the lesson, you can focus on the learning, you can focus on different needs and all. Did you feel good about that part?
I really did.
Did you?
I felt it went pretty well.
Was there anything that you consciously remembered that was deliberate in terms of classroom management?
Probably the ignoring parts where I'm conscious that they're doing that, and I know that it's not something that I really need to deal with right then. It wasn't a huge problem. So rather than, taking time out of the process of the lesson and the push of the lesson, I just decided to, not worry about that, and it would hopefully go away. So.
Good. And that's really harder to do with someone else in the room. When you don't have an adult in the room, you more naturally ignore things that can be ignored. There's a greater tendency to jump and to verbally intervene when you have someone watching. So when you have your own classroom and you're on your own, you'll feel even better about that, I think. What went well during your lesson?
I guess from kind of beginning to end, the beginning of the lesson, I felt like there was some good discussion. Having them provide me with answers rather than me just jumping in and telling them this is what we're going to learn about and these are all the aspects of it. Instead, they provided me with that, so they had to come up with it themselves. Okay. So I thought that went well. The activity was kind of hectic with all the kids up there
Mhm.
in the room, but I really felt like that helped them understand exactly what was happening. We were talking about the blood and how it works, and I felt that by having them doing it and being actively involved, their retention was higher because they had actually been involved in the flow of it.
Let me take that to lead to my next question then. Did you accomplish your learning objectives, and what were those objectives during the lesson?
I believe I did. First of all, I wanted to make them aware of ways that they can tell when they're sick, just to make them aware of that so they can be able to go and tell someone when they need help. I wanted them to be aware that their body has ways of fighting against germs and things. And then finally, I wanted them to take that one a step further, that the blood does a major role in that. And I really feel like they were accomplished.
Okay, I would agree with you. I think probably the best indicator of the fact that you were meeting your goals were the children's comments and questions towards the end of the lesson, where they actually helped started structuring the end of that lesson for you and helping you gain closure with it, which is neat to see and encouraging as a teacher. Changing tacks a little bit here. What challenges have you discovered teaching this particular group of children?
I think the biggest and most obvious is just the wide range of abilities, because it was a combination class, just the wide range
Okay.
of ability levels.
Typically, theorists will say if you have a 10-year-old child, say a fourth grader, you'll have a range anywhere from second to sixth, seventh, even eighth grade ability. And you already have a 2-year span in terms of third and fourth. What other challenges besides the ability range do you have within that classroom?
Just the number of differences between the children, whether it's behavior, some of them need some more attention to that, some of them need less attention, just the wide range of differences between the children as well as.
Okay, let's talk about differences a little more. I would agree with you. There is a wide range. What are some of those differences? In what ways are your students different from each other? Ethnically, demographically?
My students come from a wide variety of backgrounds. As far as race and ethnicity, I have a large white population and a large Hispanic population, as well as a Cambodian child and an African American child. So from that range, there's a wide variety of backgrounds. They come from a variety of home environments too. Some of them have some parents that are more involved. Some are latchkey kids that go home at the end of the day and they're the only ones there. That has to do with some of the places that my parents are employed, or the parents of my students are employed. Some of them are required to work outside of the home a lot more than others, so they don't have the opportunity to get involved as much as maybe they would like.
Is there a major employer that more of your parents are employed by?
Definitely, there's the beef packing plant hires or employs a large percentage of our parents. I think kind of that shows kind of where some of the kids are coming from. It's a hard, tough job, and they do that every day, so they don't really have the opportunity maybe that some parents do to come into the schools and get involved as much as maybe they would want to.
Okay. You've talked a little bit about the different background of your students, ethnically, language, home environments, etc. That results in a whole variety of different things that the students bring to school in terms of who they are, their culture, their backgrounds. How do you meet different student needs then when you have such a diverse background?
I think the first thing in meeting student needs is establishing a positive rapport with them, just to let them know that you're there and you care about them, and try to understand where they're coming from. I think that's the first step. And then beyond that, meeting those needs, whether it's academically or socially, basically giving them the opportunity to explore different academic areas at their level and maybe push them to go a level higher, and providing them social opportunities to converse with other students and kind of build up those important skills.
Okay, let's follow that up with, how did you meet the diverse student needs within the context of this lesson?
I felt this lesson was really good to meet a lot of different learning styles. We opened with kind of a background discussion for that auditory learner. We did some graphic organizers on the board to begin it for the visual. And that was kind of just to get into their schema and find out what they knew. From there we did a really active part of the lesson when everyone was involved in being either part of the blood or a germ or an antibody. So for that, bodily kinesthetic learner, that really touched on that. And then the end was important, just to kind of do the review again. That the end was more of the visual auditory with the sheets of paper and showing what was going on in that review. So I really felt like it tapped on a lot of those different learning styles, presented the information a lot of different ways.
I would agree with that. I think there is a lot of diversity in that class, and the diversity does not necessarily lead to specific different learning styles. But if you have a lesson with multiple approaches or modalities to teach, your chance of meeting those needs goes up significantly. And you did a good job with that. Let me follow with one other item. We've talked about how your students are different in terms of their backgrounds, what they bring to the table when they come to school. How are they similar?
A lot of them have the same ethnic and racial background. I had a large Hispanic population in the class, so that's something that some of them had in common. There was also a large percentage of Caucasian students, so those are some commonalities within them. As far as the SES background is kind of similar in some sections of the class.
Okay. Brooke, what kinds of things did you do to show children that you cared about them, that you loved them?
I think the most important thing is every time I walk into my classroom, or I'm already there and my kids walk in, they're greeted with a smile, a hello. I try and show my energy and enthusiasm for teaching and for working with kids. I think another important aspect of that is in kind of behavior management. I think it's really important to be persistent, to show them that there are appropriate ways to behave, but it doesn't have to be a hard come down on them. It's persistence, but it's also caring and understanding.
Brooke, let's wrap this up here. You did a good job with the students. I think you knew where you were going with the lesson. You knew what your objectives were. You met those objectives. The student feedback that you received at the end was indicative of that. Your classroom control and management was good. It was second nature for the most part. I didn't see you stopping to do discipline, take care of discipline, and then going back to your lesson, and then taking care of discipline, and going back to your lesson. You were operating on multiple levels at the same time. You were teaching your lesson and managing the class, again, almost second nature. I appreciate your thoughtfulness about the diversity as well as the similarity of your students. I think what's occurring in your classroom as well as throughout the school is that as you deal with the children as children, cognizant of the diversity in the background, but you come back to good teaching with multiple modalities, with a belief that all children can learn, that by displaying your own enthusiasm and building your own enthusiasm and excitement, the children catch on to that, and that cuts across all cultures and all backgrounds. I was really pleased to see that, and I think you're really off going in a good direction with your students. I think you got a lot of professional pieces down, especially having that management down early at this point in your career will allow you to focus more and more on learning, teaching and learning, and less upon management.